Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Prodigal Son. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. We have, Malcolm having that dream about him and Eve, and she's cooking blueberry muffins or whatever, but he was like, these are cherries. It's like, no, they're blueberries. And he's like, wait, what? And he's like, this is usually where the bad aspect of his dreams come into play, but it wasn't a full-blown nightmare, which is a rarity for him. And he wakes up the Eve there, and she's like, oh, what, had a nightmare? He was like, no, actually a dream. But then it's kind of like, but then they start making out and stuff like that. I kind of like that. It was kind of sweet because he's like, what was that file about? I was like, oh, tell me what your dream about. It's like, you. It's always about you. And I'm like, oh, that's adorable. But it gets him thinking because he goes to his sister to go like, okay, I need you to I kind of got this feeling that Eve is lying to me. It's like, what? Basically, in her mind, she's like, the fact of the matter is you're just being self-destructive. It's like something good is in your life and you don't want to believe it's good. It's like not 99% of the people in the world aren't serial killers. But Malcolm's like, yes, but we are the 1%. Because Ainsley knows that Malcolm isn't very good at trusting people and just kind of treats this as a situation of fine. The fact of the matter is, before you kind of go imploding things, fine. You work with the cops, right? So you get them to investigate it and I'll look into it. And then we can both decide who's the actual better investigator or something like that. And Malcolm takes a second and he's like, what? No, it's me, obviously, So I even love later on he brings it up to Danny. Danny's like, wait, you want me to investigate your girlfriend? He's like, yeah, it's a long story, starts with a serial killer father, ends with, major trust issue, having a hard time trusting people. And she's like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. He's like, yeah, you probably missed the joke, the whole joke about not trusting me. She's not, I heard it. And for her, it's like, I'm not going to be the reason why your relationship fell apart because you're trying to get me in the middle of it. So that's interesting. But nevertheless, that's kind of skipping over like the main case. I'm going to be all over the place just because of how a lot of stuff ends up connecting. But the main overarching case this week is about there's like a baby, almost like basically a baby bash type of situation. A celebration of like these influencers named Ezra and Alyssa who are, celebrating their baby and everything. But Ezra ends up getting killed with a broken bottle in his neck. I even love Idrissa telling Malcolm this stuff. It's like, oh, we're over here by the stiff. And then Gil was like, could you not? And she's like, it's kind of like, oh, is stiff kind of like an inappropriate, stiff kind of a bad word to kind of say in this regard. But Idrissa was kind of like, oh, be careful around the bottle because it might, essentially he was like, are you saying that the bottle might pop? And she's like, yeah. I halfway expected when it popped, there was going to be blood gushing out. I thought she was kind of insinuating basically where it was, that basically the moment it popped, there would be blood coming out. I mean, maybe there would have been, but maybe because it's so long, whatever the case may be, pressure kept getting me and build up. I even love later on when the body's being taken away and Malcolm's on the phone and everything. And Idrissa says, oh, wait, it's about to pop. She's like, Malcolm. It already popped and whizzed past him. But then all of a sudden she jumps on her sheet and she lands on top of him. She's like, okay, my reaction time was I was a little off on that situation. And I was like, because even at one point when she was holding him back, like with one hand, Gil was like, your hand? And she's like, oh, sorry. Because once again, it's just super adorable how she is around Malcolm. But nevertheless, I do love that Malcolm. And once again, it's just like freaking Martin. He's like, my boy. It's like, yo, you've avoided me. Why do I feel like you kind of avoid me? He's like, no, I've just had so much other stuff. It's like, oh, a girlfriend. He's like, what? Nah. And I love that he is seeing and goes, oh, that cop you work with, Danny. I'm like, that is kind of interesting that he immediately goes to, Danny, because it's super obvious that he likes Danny, but I just thought that was kind of adorable. And the fact of the matter is, I love it. Even like, he's like, wait, is that a baby in the background? Wow, you do move quick, Malcolm. And I love that whole situation. And then he's like, no, it's like a baby step. And he's like, it's a what? Martin's, trying to understand the whole situation too. But I just thought that was just, and once again, it's like, I bring up all the time, I love that aspect about Martin. Even though he's like this bad guy, he has this funny charm to him, and it's like there's a dark element of humor when it comes to him because he is kind of so charismatic and charming to a certain extent. It's just it always gets me where I'm like, I feel bad because I'm like, I should be laughing at bits that Martin has, but it's just, you're just like, oh, Martin, you're a serial killer, but guys, you're so damn charming. It turns into that whole like, oh, it's almost like the whole Joe situation from You. A little different. Kind of along the same lines of like, you should hate him, but God, you love to hate him, type of situation. Regardless, I'm going on a tangent and all that. But obviously, this case is kind of hitting Malcolm because the case is all about keeping secrets, and he feels like Eve's keeping secrets, and even like Ainsley ends up, because obviously, Eve shows up and she's like, "Hey, this is the woman from the box. Her name is Sophie," and it's like, and Jessica's looking through the files like, oh, her mom, like the initials from the necklace come from her mom and everything. Her mom's deceased. Ainsley kind of I wonder if it's their first time being fully. They've met before, haven't they? Or at least the way this conversation went, it seemed like this was their first time meeting. Interestingly enough, but then Ainsley goes hard, being like, oh, right, this whole adoption and everything. Oh, that's interesting. How'd you know her middle name? It was somewhere in the files. You grew up in South Carolina, didn't you? And she's like, no, North Carolina. Yeah, but you were adopted. I'm like, yo, look at Ainsley go. And obviously Jessica be like, oh, ignore my children. They're all kind of messed up in their own way. But Eve ends up leaving. And it's like, Jessica's like, what are you doing? Like, did you really have to kind of turn this in kind of like a news report? But like, Ainsley is like, Mom, we need to talk about Eve. And it's like, oh, so she did discover some stuff. So we'll get to that soon enough. But obviously with the case, Malcolm felt like, obviously, Alyssa wasn't telling everything because she had a cut on her arm and it was bleeding and she wasn't really talking. And then it's like the whole thing about like just a lot of stuff about her wasn't necessarily adding up. So that whole situation was interesting. I really need to quickly talk about it. I love that like Danny had that perspective of, no, I'm not going to look into your girlfriend for you. Whereas JT was like, oh, so I heard about that. And Malcolm was like, oh, so that's spreading. He's like, yeah, no worries. He's like, when I was single, I looked into every girlfriend I had. He's like, even Tally? I was like, oh, definitely. She found out she almost didn't speak to me for a week. So it's a situation of, yeah, I kind of didn't, almost messed up what would have been the best thing in my life. So it's a situation of, rather than kind of doing all this behind her back, have a conversation with her, be honest. And he's like, and basically Malcolm kind of goes super honest. He's like, oh, you talking about the fact is that I kind of have trust issues and stuff like that just because of my serial killer dad and everything. And I love that, it was something along those lines. And JT was like, okay, maybe not that honest, but so I just love that. But at the same time, it seems like this is all connected to Christine, going back to the case, because it's like, oh, because Christine isn't who she says she is, because the fact of the matter is, Alyssa is so, type A about stuff like that. There's no way she would have not done a thorough background into Christine. So it's like, how did she get the job? Because at first it seems like it might have been a thing of like her and Ezra, because it's like, yeah, Christine hasn't really had the best luck with men. And it's like, that's so interesting how that was such a line earlier in the episode. I forgot about it, but what that means later on we'll get to. But I think it's interesting when you kind of like, that was kind of foreshadowing some stuff, but like, oh, Ezra, he's kind of a great guy. Like the other nanny, I love that lady was like, they were like, oh, can we talk to your nanny? She's like, about me? And they're like, no, about Christine. And like, oh, she's like, okay. I just love that she got bashful like that and stuff like that immediately. But the fact is that they were under the impression that Ezra and Christine were having an affair, but that obviously wasn't the case. But now Christine's trying to steal the baby and everything, but she didn't steal the baby. And it's like, what's up with that? And then immediately I started kind of piecing stuff together myself. I was like, it has to be that Christine's actually the mother. And I was like, because I started to think maybe Alyssa didn't know that Christine was the mom. Maybe that's what the whole situation ended up being. I was wondering if that was the case. And it kind of gets revealed later on because obviously because what ends up happening is the fact is that Alyssa was waiting because she thought no one was watching, but then they kind of pieced it together because obviously they got in contact with Christine's husband, and he's in Canada, and he's like, oh, she just disappeared a year ago. So it's like, what's that about? Essentially, it seems like she kind of has a criminal history. She kind of has this impulse thing of just kind of stealing it and kind of doing something. So they're wondering, but even for Malcolm, it still didn't sit right that even if it turned out that the baby was hers and everything, why would she commit the murder? That they were thinking that basically because of her pre-existing mental condition that maybe she tried to steal the baby back and stuff like that. But it's actually even sadder when this situation plays out. But could we see Alyssa dumps all the they thought, because even I was like, is she throwing the baby? I was like, what? But it's like, oh no, she had the baby. So basically she was throwing away all the stuff that was meant to, the prosthetics and stuff to make it seem like she was pregnant. They hide the fact, because they were trying to hide the fact is that it wasn't their pregnancy, because she tried to get pregnant multiple times, but she had 3 miscarriages, and so they went away to kind of make it seem like it, because they had this like appearance that they kind of had to keep up, and it's like her not being able to actually have a baby, it just would have negatively affected their brand and stuff like that. But it's like, but even like Alyssa kept saying like, no, it's the baby, no, it's my baby, because it's like I'm still that child's mother regardless of everything. But the sad thing is, they end up tracking down Christine, and it turns out like her husband, Lucas, is abusive. That's why she ran away from and that's what, circling back to what the nanny was like, oh yeah, like she said she had tough luck with men because her last relationship was very abusive. And so it's like she was okay with giving her child, because the child, because I was like, is the baby Ezra's? It's like, no, it's Lucas's. And she didn't want Lucas to have anything to do with their daughter. So she was giving the child to Alyssa and Ezra, but obviously, Alyssa never knew the truth because Ezra wanted to protect her from it and never like worry her about it, because he made it seem like, oh, it was all through like some dark web stuff and stuff like that. Like they didn't really know who the baby's mother was, and it turns out it is Christine. And so when she took the baby, she wasn't trying to take the baby. She was kissing the baby and trying to, like, why when they went in the room, it's like, oh, she left the baby. She just wanted the chance to say goodbye because she realized Lucas had found her. Like the entire time he made it seem like he was still in Canada contacting them. He was actually in New York the entire time. So he had beaten her up, and like during that situation, she just out of fear for her life, just it slipped out about their baby, and so now he's after Alyssa, and luckily Malcolm was able to get to her in time and kind of warn her about everything. And because Malcolm tried to talk him down, because it's like, why you're doing what you're doing is because it's not good. But it's like Malcolm tried to process of being like, the reason why you're doing this is because when you were younger, someone did that to you, made you think that it was a form of love, but when in actuality it's abuse, and you continued that cycle by abusing Christine. She didn't want you to do that to your daughter. So but he tried, basically he was about to kill Malcolm, but luckily Alyssa came over, bashed his head multiple times with the globe, and luckily Malcolm stopped her, and it's like, and she's like, I don't know what came over me, and he was like, motherly instincts, a mother's need to protect her child. So showing her, it's like, you might not be blood related, but that's still your baby. You feel that drive to protect your baby, And even in JT later on, it's like, honestly, that I don't know what it was, but Alyssa, that was badass what she did. Yeah, and it was pretty impressive, and it was a beautiful sentiment of knowing that, especially at the end where it's like Christine was already giving the child over, because it's like Malcolm has said it like, Christine had already made up her mind to give Ezra and Alyssa the baby, just because it's like she knew that they would love that baby wholeheartedly, and it's sad because Ezra tried to pay Lucas off, but Lucas is like, because like Christine was his property, and it's like, you don't take what's mine, and it's like, that baby's mine. So it wasn't even just out of love, it was almost like this property, like it's almost like, this is my property, this is my thing, type of situation. And it's sad at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, luckily though, Christine had signed over all the rights, and Alyssa gets to keep the baby in the end. So it's like things kind of ultimately ended up working out. I did like the whole thing with JT, and it's like, oh, and then like you have Malcolm figuring out, he's like, all this stuff, overeating, what was it, the Hot Pocket, not Hot Pockets, but the pizza rolls and this and that. He's like, it's sympathetic pregnancy or whatever, something like that. And it's like, Tally's pregnant, and he was like, the baby's not even like a certain size yet, and you're already profiling it. And it's like, don't tell anyone about it. And it's like, it's okay, because he doesn't want to jinx it. And he's like, but what do I know about being a father? Like, what if I mess it up? What if the baby comes out like you? And Malcolm's looking at her like, what the fuck did you just say? He's like, well, for one, don't be a serial killer, and two, follow your own advice. Just be honest, and it'll kind of all work out. And like I said, I like that being an aspect of this episode of it. Hey, honesty, because he ends up having to sit down with his dad, and it's like, it's food and everything. It's like, oh, you think I'm a criminal? You should see the cooks here or whatever. And it's like, oh, he's asking all these questions about like, oh, and I thought it was kind of interesting because Malcolm ends up opening up a little bit to his dad, because it's like, you are the best liar I know. And he's like, oh, I never lied. He's like, yes, you did. You were actually a serial killer. You lied to mom. You lied to me. And he's like, no. It was never a lie. Like how I felt about you and your mom, it's true. I was just living a double life. The fact of the matter is saying that there are some things that you kind of keep a little buried. You know, their secrets aren't a bad thing. They're kind of a good thing. You know, it's just like everyone has secrets. You know why? Because it's a human thing, you know? And obviously because Malcolm, because he's not well adjusted, you know, to something as simple as like a human situation, as like, you know, because for him, it's like any form of deceit, because that's actually something that came up in last episode, because it's like his distrust of people, like, and it's so interesting that it's been building up to this point, but obviously for him, it's trusting people is not the easiest thing, but obviously over the course of the series so far, we've seen him kind of slowly break down that wall, but there's still aspects of getting really close to people, you know, that kind of hinders that, but it kind of plays into this particular part, and it's just kind of like, you know, he's like, if I wasn't willing to it's the whole thing of kind of basically letting your guard down, willing to, like, you know, let people kind of keep their secrets, and you keep your own secrets, and just kind of, you know, open yourself up, you know, to potential heartbreak and, you know, the pain of it. And he's like, if it wasn't for me kind of letting my guard down and just kind of ignoring all that, like, you wouldn't be here right now. So it wouldn't be like he wouldn't have, you know, Malcolm or Ainsley. And I thought it was such a, you know, neat element. And even Malcolm was like, no, we're not having a moment. And Martin's like, we're kind of having a moment. I was like, that was kind of interesting. But he's the one that ended up helping Malcolm figure out the whole Christine angle to the whole situation. But nevertheless, there's the other angle of Malcolm returns home and he finds Jessica and Ainsley there. And it's like, you were right. And it's like, I love Malcolm being like, I was right about Eve, and Ainsley being like, yeah, but also there's a whole aspect of me doing the due diligence and being really good at kind of investigating. But, you know, so she's like, for now, we'll just kind of ignore that part of things. But it was like, he was right about Eve keeping secrets, that she was getting close to the family for one particular reason. And it was about, you know, the surgeon. She wanted to learn more about them. That's why she got closer to their mom. And then he was like, for him, he blames himself because he's like, I've had a feeling for like the past week that, you know, my subconscious was trying to tell me something. I just wasn't listening. But it's interesting too, because he had nightmares about the girl in the box around the time he was sleeping with Eve too. So like that night with the whole knife situation, it makes you wonder, did he even know something back then? Was his mind trying to tell something even that far back? But regardless, it gets revealed, you know, that basically Ainsley is like, yeah, this has to deal with the woman in the box because they're related. And then Eve came in, she was like, I was hoping to explain myself. And it's like, the woman in the box was my sister. I was like, once again, probably plenty of people that figured it out a while back. But obviously for me, I didn't figure it out until like, what was it, episode 15, where that whole situation came up. I was like, is that what that was supposed to? And that's where it kind of hit me. People probably figured it out sooner, but for me, I was like, episode 15 was when I kind of hinted. Once again, I threw it out there, but I was more so leaning because I thought because of the age situation, because it's been like 20 so years, I was thinking like that was most likely her mom. I threw out there maybe that I knew ultimately I was like they had to be related, but I was leaning more towards mom, daughter. I did throw out their sisters, but I wasn't 100% sure. And it turns out they are sisters. And obviously for Malcolm, like he took this whole situation hard because Eve's like, oh, I guess you already made up your mind about and he was trying to go after her, but he just stops and he starts freaking out and he smashes his phone and he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, no one else needs to apologize. He's like, I knew something was wrong about Eve. I knew something was wrong about us. I knew something was wrong about me. And Ainsley is like, you need to deal with this. And he was like, no, I can't figure this out. But at least this case I can focus on. Even the fact is, I think it speaks volumes. Who's the one person he did tell outside of his family to find out the truth about Eve? Danny. So I think that speaks volumes. I'm like, oh. But later on, like he's willing to kind of, you know, take the opportunity, you know, to face the truth. And so Eve thought he was going to leave a letter, but they wait. Like, so it is kind of what I thought. Okay. So because I kept trying to think like, oh, what made her decide to come to the family now? Like, I was like, oh, maybe she didn't realize before. Maybe it was just serendipity. She happened to be around them. And then later on, it's like, oh, there is something to this. Eve, you know, her sister was old. Like, luckily at the time that their mother died, Eve was young enough that she could be put into the system, but her sister was older, so she couldn't be. But obviously her sister kept in touch and living in New York and everything until one day it stopped. And then obviously, you know, Eve tried looking everywhere for her sister. Then she found out about the surgeon, and it's like he had 23 victims. So it's like you had a feeling he might have had more. So she started looking into it. That's why she got so close to the family, because it's like, maybe you guys know more that I don't. So she got close to Jessica as a means of trying to figure out, oh, like, maybe you know more. But then she realized, like, oh, even Jessica knew less about the situation, just as much about the situation as she did. And so, but then she didn't expect things to play out the way they did. She didn't expect to fall for Malcolm and actually have real feelings for him. And like, it didn't go into this, but I think the moment Jessica put it out there about the neck, the bracelet, that's what drew her back in. But I think she was still keeping her distance, because in the grand scheme of things, it's what she said in this episode. He's like, you can show me the picture of your sister and I can tell you whether she was the girl or not. But it's like, because she didn't want to know, because if Malcolm confirmed not knowing, she thought was just better than actually ever getting an answer for, because she had a feeling her sister was dead, and she didn't admit if she showed the picture to Malcolm and he confirms it, it makes it a reality. So she was like, she didn't want to do it. And I think maybe that's why. But then when Jessica reached out, kind of realizing, because she saw the family as kind of victims in this whole situation as well. She saw Malcolm as a victim, kind of understanding everything. So I think from that perspective, that's why she wanted to get close to him again. But I think that necklace did play a part, even though she doesn't really explain that. But I think it's kind of what brought her close. I mean, it still was it took a while after Jessica went public with the bracelet. I kept saying necklace, bracelet. Before she came back, but it was more so because Jessica reached out to her because she needed a lawyer, right? So there's that whole angle to that. But she doesn't want Malcolm to look at it, because it's like, this is trauma for you too. Like, she's afraid of what this might do to Malcolm. But for Malcolm, it's like, we can't keep living our lives, with the keeping everything buried and hidden in a box or a locked purse. The fact of the matter is, we have to face the truth head on. It's the only way. Because saying that, basically, like, it's like for Malcolm, he needs to know what happened, and he needs to know what happened. And for Eve, he's like, you deserve to know the truth about what happened. And so it is a situation of like, okay, so she ends up showing him the photo, and he confirms that it is her sister. Like, he saw her, so she is dead. So now the question then becomes, what are you going to do now? I mean, granted, your dad's already locked up and everything, but now it's like someone you've got to know. Like, because she was saying, like, as long as we kind of ignore this, we can move forward. But like, obviously this trauma, like, there can never be in a relationship for this. But like Malcolm saying, like, him kind of finding out what he can't remember and her knowing the truth was kind of more important. So it might not be possible for them to have a relationship, which part of me is like, kind of frees you up to be with daddy. That's just my thought, which you wonder if that's the angle they're going down with. I don't know, but it does present some very interesting stuff. And once again, the complicated relationship Malcolm already has with Martin, but I realize, like, there's at least one victim unaccounted for. Who knows if there are more or not? There might be, but the question then becomes like, well, where do they go going forward? At least now she knows the truth, but it's like, when it's all said and done, like, what is Abe going to do with that truth? What does that mean for her and Malcolm going forward? Her and Jessica, because Jessica had become kind of like a friend to her. So a lot of that stuff has to be considered, going forward, We'll just have to wait to see where everything takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. The next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.